like, do we have any data on the heat shield that can't be seen? I don't know what it would be. I'm assuming not, but I'm just asking what, if anything's known about what's going on in the parts that are covered. Thanks.
Yeah, so the inspection we did was primarily for the back shells, and so that's I think it's about 1,300 different back shell tiles that are covered with that Ciox tape in most cases. So we're just looking to see if we see any notable damage that might give us a concern, that might want us to change how we do our reentry profile. The tiles themselves are very robust and they have huge levels of margin, so we can accommodate some MMOD damage without compromising the vehicle. So we're just looking to evaluate, do we see anything that would be beyond what we think we can accommodate, and we really didn't see anything at all. So that's what we're looking at. In terms of the heat shield, no, we're not getting data off of that at this time. You know, that's been covered with the service module. And so we will not be getting any data off of that until we hit that separation phase.
Bill Harwood with CBS. A question for Lily. Is Lily still on the line?
Yes.
Can you go over the crew extraction sequence? In other words, which astronaut comes off first? Do you alternate one on one chopper, one on the other, and then rotate back through? Can you like tell us who's first off, who's last off, and how they sequence the choppers? Thanks.
Yes, I can definitely answer that. The nominal plan is to open the hatch, and the first medic will go in and assess the crew right away, and then he will be helping the first crew member in seat 3, which is actually Jeremy, and then the second medic will enter, and he will go to Reed, and then we'll have the 2 follow-on medics along with the medical officer. The Navy medical officer will go in and take care of Victor and Christina. Once they assess that everything's well, the plan is to egress Christina first, then Victor, then Jeremy, and then Reed. Of course, if there are any situations medically where there's some concern, the medical officer has the right to egress the person who is impaired first if needed. And that's pretty much the sequence that we will also pick up via helicopter.
We'll go with Will.
Thank you. Will Robinson-Smith with Spaceflight Now. Thank you all for taking the time. Question to Rick. You mentioned the remaining manual piloting events that are still left. Can you talk about which crew members are going to be doing what? And then just a quick one to Lakeisha. We've heard the crew during each of the crew planning briefings talk about the lights on the Avatar experiments. Some are on, some are off. Can you explain what a light being off actually means? Thanks.
Sure. As far as the manual piloting demonstration this afternoon, all 4 crew members are scheduled for that event. And from what I recall pre-flight, Reed really wanted to ensure that this spacecraft could be flown by pilots and non-pilots. And so I would expect everyone to have an opportunity to have a chance to fly the spacecraft so that we can understand the handling capabilities of Orion, both from a pilot's perspective as well as from a non-pilot, because by demonstrating that Orion is capable of being flown by pilots and non-pilots, you open the door for a wider range of future astronaut selections and flight crew assignments, because you no longer have to be beholden to there being a test pilot in the commander and pilot seats. You can really allow anyone in the astronaut corps to help fly that spacecraft.
Yeah, to your question about Avatar, we will get you someone to get you a specific answer about the lights on, lights off, but that's an autonomously run system. It's still got good power to it, and it is still functioning. It reported back that it's still functioning as it should, right? So we'll be looking forward to getting that off of the ship to get the data from it at the end of the mission. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Ed Lavendero with CNN. Thank you for taking the time today. Can you talk about, and this might be a question for Lily and Reed, how many aircraft, drones, kind of getting eyes on the capsule as it's coming back in for re-entry? And is that number kind of standard, or is it more because this is such the first time there's been a crew on this particular capsule re-entering?
Lily, do you want to take that one? I think. you would probably be better suited to answer it.
I think it's good. Thank you. And Debbie can confirm that there's going to be at least 7 different aircraft, sci-fi aircraft at different altitudes imaging the vehicle. And Debbie, correct me if I got that wrong.
No, that's correct, and it's a lot more than we had on Artemis I. We've added quite a few more air assets to capture more imagery as the vehicle is coming down.
Correct. So besides those sci-fi planes, we will be using 2 of the Navy military helicopters, MH-60s, with our own gimbals. They're going to be at different altitudes who will be much closer to the splashdown, taking imaging of the splashdown all the way until splashdown. If for some reason we have clouds, we also have additional gimbals on the bow of the ship to be able to capture that landing right when it happens right in front of the ship for us.
Go ahead.
Hi, Andrea Leinfelder of the Houston Chronicle. I was hoping to talk a little more about this being a test flight. We've talked a lot about the toilet, but can you give us a little more information on the water valve and the service module issues that you hope to learn from?
Sure. I think early in the mission we talked about a water valve in the water on-off valve in the potable water system that had we saw had inadvertently closed. And so because that's in the service module, we will not be getting the service module back. And so we have designed a bit of a test to do. I think it's happening later today. The timeline's moving around a bit, but to kind of do some additional opening and closing of different valves in that system to learn more about those behaviors. Always taking into account we never will put us at risk of not having water available. So we're actually doing this, now that I think about it, it's later in the mission to make sure that we have all the water we need and we're done with any access to that system that's required. So that's one of the things we're doing just to learn about the valves in that system since we won't be getting the service module back.
Irene Klotz with Aviation Week for Debbie. Can you discuss a little bit the applicability of the data that's going to be collected about the heat shield wear on Artemis II for the heat shields that are being changed for Artemis, actually 4 in particular, and also for 3 since it's not going to be coming back from a lunar orbit? Just what value is that information now? Thanks.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm prepared to talk to you about Artemis III today, but the value of the data off Artemis II, we are flying a different profile, but we have what we expect to see on that heat shield based on that profile and based on our ground testing. So a lot of this data we get is to validate the models and the testing we saw on the ground to make sure we're able to recreate behavior in testing on the ground, and then we can use the recreations on the ground to actually test what we want to do in the future. So we are building what we call the permeable heat shield for Artemis III that is designed for lunar returns. We've been talking about Artemis III now being maybe a LEO or a HEO mission. Again, we get data back regardless, and so we can look at the heating on that heat shield from return, correlate it to our models, correlate it to our ground testing, and so it's not you have to have those lunar returns. We can use that data to help prove out that design as we move forward.
Okay, we'll go there and then to the gentleman in front of you.
Hi, Dr. Allison McGraw from Mysterious Meteorites. This is perhaps a question for Debbie. How is the risk assessment for micrometeoroids or orbital debris completed?
There's a very defined tool we use called PRA, probabilistic risk assessment, where we actually look at all of the things that create risk for the mission, and MMOD is one of those items. And so we have MMOD predictions for the environments that we're flying in, the orbits we're flying in, and those feed into that tool, and that's how we determine where that risk falls in that regime. We designed the spacecraft to try and be tolerant to MMOD strikes by putting a lot of margin into our TPS materials and flying in certain ways to keep the MMOD away from where we don't want it to be. So not a lot we can do with what's out there, but we try and characterize it and analyze to it so we understand what we're accepting.
Okay, we can go to you, and then we'll take another question from the phone.
Hi, Michael Adkison, Houston Public Media. I have a question for Rick. I want to ask how reentry for this mission looks different than it did for Artemis I, and also recent missions over the last, couple of decades, how this is specifically different. And then if I could also get a quick confirmation to tonight's press conference. I tried to figure out if this is the first press conference from deep space before, or at least, out of Earth orbit, and couldn't figure that out 100%. So if anyone has that confirmation.
Well, on that one, we'll have to go back and look what they did during Apollo. So we'll get back to you.
As far as the changes on entry between Artemis I and Artemis II, the most significant difference is the range from entry interface to splashdown. We've talked a number of times about how we've shortened the entry range. We're down around 2,000 miles for this mission, and that's a function of the certification of the heat shield.
And we did just actually get a quick follow-up that there were in-flight opportunities with the crew during Apollo. Okay, we'll go to the phone. We'll get a question from Micah Maidenberg with the Wall Street Journal.
Hi, thanks, Rachel. Just a couple of things for Rick. Rick, how long does the period of max velocity that you mentioned last? And can you talk about sort of the expectations for crew during reentry? Are they expected to be silent, make verbal observations about what's going on? Thanks.
Yeah, the period of max velocity shouldn't last long. We're continuing to speed up as we speak. We're getting closer and closer to Earth, and our velocity is increasing, and it'll peak out right around entry interface. As for what's going on in the cockpit, it'll be very similar to when you're on board a aircraft flying commercial. The pilots are nothing but professional because they're focused on the task at hand. And so I expect the cockpit to be silent as Reed and Victor monitor the spacecraft performance. If all goes nominal, they will not need to take any actions, but they have been trained working with my team of flight controllers to respond in the event that we are faced with an off-nominal scenario.
Our next question is from Joseph Howlett with Scientific American.
Hi. From the mission thus far, I'm curious if there's any lessons you've learned that have informed the plan for reentry. Are there any new risks or contingencies that you're thinking about based on what you've learned so far aboard?
As far as what we've learned throughout the mission that has changed how we've done entry, we really have had a really well-functioning spacecraft. My team is going to take the console tomorrow, and we're going to have a briefing with the flight crew in preparation for entry. And really, we don't have any major things. Debbie's got the water valve testing that they talked about, but again, we're going to jettison the service module. The crew module propulsion system is nominal. We're going to activate that tomorrow and see how it's functioning. And so we're planning a nominal entry with procedures just as we had developed them pre-flight.
Joey.
Hey, thanks, Joey Rillet with Reuters. What's the temperature going to be inside the cabin at peak heating or peak velocity? And for any of the little tiny problems that have popped up during this mission, like the toilet and that weird smell that the crew was experiencing, is there anything you have to do with those before re-entry, or is there any problems they might pose during re-entry? Thanks.
I would say from a hardware standpoint, nothing we're doing on those relative to re-entry. We have not had any reports of that smell again, and so we'll look more into that in the crew module when it gets back. Things like the wastewater venting, we have some new work planned on the dock at the Naval Base San Diego to try and get some early data off of that system. So we're modifying some things on the ground as soon as it gets here to get some data back very quickly, but nothing that we're changing in the mission profile relative to those items.
And recall on entry, the crew will be suited with their visors down in a pressurized suit so that they're going to get cool air, and so regardless of the cabin temperature, they'll remain cool and comfortable in their suits.
Jackie Goddard for the Times of London. I wondered if Lily could just tell us, are there any other recovery or rescue assets in the area? The expectation that the capsule's just going to plot right in front of the vessel, I was just wondering if there's other stuff in the area in case it doesn't. And also, could anybody just talk us through how you, what's going to happen with the astronauts after they come back here? Has there been conversation about what their wishes are in terms of public appearance and so on? Thank you.
Okay, this is Lily. I'll answer the first one. Yes, we still are working with the military to ensure that if there is an off-nominal event, that we have rescue forces ready to go to the site of the off-nominal landing. And so we have C-17s with PJs that are stationed at Joint Base Charleston, ready to deploy if needed. And then we have a C-17 with PJs and also all of the hardware that's needed to rescue the crew at Joint Base Pearl Harbor, ready to go at entry. So we're pretty much covered if there is an off-nominal event and they do not land where the ship is. Now, if they land, a short distance from the ship, obviously we will start heading towards the splashdown site. And I'll let somebody else take the second question.
Yes, we do hope to have an opportunity to hear directly from the crew once they return to Earth several days after their return. Okay, let's come down to the front row here.
Zachary Albert with the Launchpad. Can you take us through the timeline of getting the experiments and science out of Orion? I know coming home from the ISS, there's some that we rapidly get back off the vessel. Is there any plans with that with Orion, or is it going to more just ship back with it when it comes back to Florida?
It's a combination. There's early desto bags that come out right away. They get shipped back on aircraft. Some of the data storage that's got some of the imagery and other technical data will actually be downloading those cards onto computers, making copies there in San Diego. So it's a combination depending on the criticality, and then the vehicle itself comes back, with the rest of the equipment.
TJ.
TJ Mascara with the Epoch Times. Thanks so much. For Lakeisha, sorry if I missed it earlier. I know we were talking about radiation data. Have you all been able to gather, or have any of that radiation data downlinked yet? And have you guys been able to take a look at it? Or is that all going to be after?
So I think I was referring to the Avatar data, and that data will obviously be brought off of the ship once it's returned.
Okay, we'll take one from the phone. This from Manuel Mazzanetti with Exploración Espacial.
Thank you so much. Manuel Mazzanetti with Exploración Espacial. A question maybe for Rick. This is not regarding entry, but the simulation that the crew performed with the oxygen. I would like to know if they provided some feedback after this exercise. I understand that they were doing in different speeds, how they felt about it, and if you received some feedback from this test. Thank you.
Manuel, we have not, we're not hearing you quite clearly. Can you try again, please?
Yes, I apologize. Manuel Mazzanetti with Exploración Espacial. I was asking Rick if he can provide if the astronauts gave some feedback regarding the test with the oxygen on board the capsule a few days ago. They were doing at different speeds, and I wonder if the crew provided some feedback of improving the process, or if they felt okay with it.
So I'm not particularly aware of any specific feedback that we've gotten yet from the OX suits from putting them on before from putting them on earlier in the mission, but the experience gained from having a chance to put them on during the mission and not just before entry is invaluable to the crew. They will have, no one's put an OX suit on in zero gravity before, and so the lessons that they learned from doing it in a arguably less stressful time in the middle of the mission, it's going to pay dividends for when they have to put it on entry day, when there is a little bit of a time constraint, because we need to ensure that they're suited and seated before entry.
Miles.
Hi, Miles Doran, CBS News. One question for Rick and one for Debbie. Rick, how long before entry interface and roughly at what altitude, if you know it, are you switching back over to TDRS and getting GPS back? How quickly is that sequence of events happening. And Debbie, after Artemis I, the main parachutes and the forward bay cover weren't able to be recovered for inspection. Is there anything you wish you knew about how they performed that you don't know based on other data that you were able to get? Thanks.
So as far as the handover from the Deep Space Network to TDRS, that's going to occur approximately 38 minutes prior to entry interface. Once the handover is complete, you'll hear a comm check from Capcom to confirm we have a good link. And I just think this is a good time to acknowledge that the Deep Space Network has been performing exceptionally through the mission. It was a watch item as we were preparing for the mission over the past couple months, but the team that has been managing those systems and ensuring good communications has really performed tremendously, and their efforts pre-flight have paid dividends.
Yeah, I'd say on the parachute question, the Artemis I was one data point, and so we really don't, it's a demonstration of how the parachutes perform, but our certification is really based on extensive ground tests where we are, chunking parachute assets out the back of a plane in Yuma and looking at all different kind of corners of the box when you have one chute out or two chutes out or one drogue and you miss a main. And so you're doing these tests on the ground to really prove out that system. So I'd say, not getting the asset back, that, you can always learn by visually inspecting it when it comes back, but that's not what we base our certification on. We are putting the parachutes for Artemis II on the, we would like to recover them and see if we get those back. But part of the reason of adding all the additional air assets that we spoke of earlier was to get some really good imagery of those chutes if we don't get them back.
Okay, we'll take one or two more, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up. Go ahead.
Hi, Nick Notario with ABC 13. Question, Rick, for you. Give us the difficulty about what you're going to do relative to the launch, the lunar flyby. For people at home, how hard is this splashdown that you all are trying to accomplish? And what are the nerves like here at JSC to make sure that those astronauts return safely to Earth?
I don't know if it's necessarily harder. I think it's just a different environment. It's very dynamic, so similarly to the launch environment, there's not a lot of time to react. When we're performing the launch of any rocket, no matter who's in charge of the launch, there's not a lot of time to respond. And we've talked a little bit, and we showed the video of the engineering team and how the operations teams and engineering teams have been working well together. Unfortunately, when we're in a really time-critical, dynamic environment, we don't have as much of an opportunity to exchange information and talk through nuances of failures. And so what's different for entry is more that there's more of a reliance on the operations teams as the experts to provide a recommendation and safely ensure that the astronauts return home.
I'll just mention that Debbie mentioned a little earlier about the probabilistic risk assessment. We don't talk a lot comparatively about the risk of one part of the mission relative to another, but obviously, launching the rocket in Ascent is a significant part of the risk that we've retired and is behind us. But obviously, we're down to the wire now. We're down to the end of the mission. And obviously getting the crew back home and getting them landed safely is a significant part of the risk that's still in front of us. So.
Okay, we'll take one final question here, and then we'll go ahead and conclude. You just wait for the mic.
But there was some conversation between the crew and control, I think it was yesterday, about the volume in the tank needing to keep on top of that ahead of re-entry. I was just wondering if you could give me some more information about what that concern might have been, or whether it even is a real concern. I take it from your previous answers, you're happy about the conditions for re-entry, but why could that be an issue? And if it is an issue, has it been resolved?
Yeah, I think the issue that if it's specific to reentry is that with that tank, it's not on reentry day than our initial models had analyzed. And so we're just looking at with a tank of that volume, are we okay? And we're perfectly fine. So just double checking loads and things like that and for reentry.
Okay, we'll go ahead and wrap up. I want to thank our participants for joining us today. We do have one time change coming up with the crew news conference scheduled for later this evening. That will occur approximately an hour later. Plan to start at 9:45 Central Time 10:45 p.m. Eastern Time. You can stay tuned for all the latest updates, including imagery, at nasa.gov, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks for joining us following our daily press conference. We are live here in the Artemis Mission Control Room, and I'm joined by Seth Lambert, developer of Arrow, the Artemis real-time orbit website that we have all loved keeping track of. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. My pleasure.
So can you tell us about how Arrow works? How do you get that telemetry from Orion and then turn it into something that we can...
To Mission Control here, and the Flight Operations Directorate takes that data, pulls out a subset of it, and passes it along to me. Arrow ingests it as text, and then goes through a parsing algorithm, evaluates that everything is looking good, and then applies the vehicle data like position, velocity, orientation to a 3D model of Orion, and then it takes the time data and passes that to the astronomy calculator, and that's how we get the position of the moon and sun relative to Earth, so that we have Orion in the context of the mission as a whole and accurate lighting.
An astronomy calculator. That is so interesting. Well, longtime fans of Artemis will remember that we also had Arrow for Artemis I. So can you tell me what has changed since then?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of the telemetry parameters have changed. Also, a lot of work that went into updating the graphics for Arrow this time around, as well as adding in the mobile app.
Well, I remember when Arrow started as an intern project of yours, and your background is in game development. That's that right? How did you end up at NASA, and how do your game development skills contribute to this?
Yeah, absolutely. I started as an intern while I was getting my education in game development. I kind of just fell into it. I never anticipated that I'd end up at NASA. I started developing a educational kiosk app, and when the opportunity to make Arrow came up, I jumped on it. Turns out there's a lot of overlap in the mathematics.
The flywheel team, this is a great device. We really enjoyed it in this small cabin. It's perfect, and it gave us a lot of good opportunity to get our heart rate up and also get some great resistance exercise. So we just wanted to shout out a nice thank you. Here we go. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for the words and the cheers.
That was Commander Reed Wiseman calling down that they have finished exercise for the mission, and that's worth celebrating. So sorry to interrupt you, but please tell us more about your background and how that helped you build Arrow.
Yeah, there's a lot of overlap between the mathematics that go into 3D game development and tracking a spacecraft. Actually, they're two of the only industries that use the math concept called quaternions, which is an extension of the complex numbers into 4 dimensions to track rotations in space.
Wow, that's fascinating. And I love having you here because that's a different background than a lot of people realize that we need at NASA. So I really appreciate that. But the public has really enjoyed keeping up with Aero. What has been your favorite part of the mission so far?
I think my favorite part has been seeing the reaction online to Aero and seeing it be a spark that people latch onto, and it gets them curious and asking questions and engaging in discussion online with each other about this mission and about what they're seeing through Aero. And it's been really wonderful to see so many people excited to learn, excited to follow the mission, and feel like they're a part of it through Aero.
That's so cool. Well, we're showing Aero right now here on the broadcast. And my last question is, besides the broadcast, where can people keep up with Aero?
During the mission, Aero is available online at www.nasa.gov/trackartemis and on the front page of the NASA mobile app.
Very cool. Well, Seth Lambert, developer of the Artemis Real-Time Orbit website, I'm so happy that we got to have you here. We have shown Aero so many times during the mission, and it just makes perfect sense that we would get to talk to you today. So thank you again.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Houston Integrity for the repress, one note.
Go ahead.
Hey, we called down a couple days ago about our contingency LIO, either the LIO canisters or the bubble wrap expanding in the depress. Well, everything is back to the right size now, and it all fits back in its stowage area, so that's great news.
Copy. Bubble wrap nominal. Thank you.
That call from Commander Reed Wiseman down to the ground, keeping us updated on the cabin pressurization. During today's press conference, the crew aboard Orion was instructed to don their hearing protection for cabin repressurization. The cabin pressure at that time was 10.48, and we are now up to 12.73. Additionally, we are tracking a shift to our crew news conference tonight that is now targeted for 9:45 p.m. Central Time, 10:45 p.m. Eastern Time. This is Artemis Mission Control with a mission elapsed time of 6 days, 23 hours, and 40 minutes into the flight of Orion for the Artemis II mission. Currently, the spacecraft is 187,694 miles away from Earth. As you can see, that little crescent Earth is even bigger than we saw it this morning. We've recently heard the crew call down that they are complete with exercise, and that wraps up exercise for them for the entire mission. Tomorrow, they will be busy configuring the spacecraft and reviewing their entry procedures. During the briefing, we also heard the crew call down that all of 4 crew members had completed their orthostatic intolerance garment testing. All crew members took turns testing and evaluating that orthostatic intolerance garment that's worn under the Orion Crew Survival System suit, or OX suit, and that helps the astronauts maintain blood pressure and circulation during the transition back to Earth's gravity. That garment is used to apply lower body compression. With those activities complete, the crew members are starting to move into their midday meal period. So on the menu for lunch on flight day 8, we have beef stew, smoked turkey, cauliflower and cheese, tropical fruit salad, chocolate pudding cake, chicken noodle soup, roasted turkey, fish with mango salsa, braised red cabbage, pasta with Coming up, Reed Wiseman and Christina Cook are also scheduled to conduct some National Geographic interviews. Through a competitive selection process, NASA selected National Geographic to help tell the story of Artemis II. The crew is equipped with multiple GoPros, both Max and Hero 11, and every day they are timelined to film from a shot list provided by National Geographic. That includes their morning routine, talking with their families, exercising, and other thoughts on the mission.
Terry to Houston for Victor and the extra accelerometer task we discussed at morning DPC. Hey Victor, just for data correlation on the ground, when you do that 5-minute accelerometer test, please give us a call at the beginning and the end of that 5 minutes.
Will do, and if you want, I can put that in work now.
Victor, we'd love to take that now. Thank you.
Okay, Houston, the accelerometers are coming on in 3, 2, 1, hack. Accelerometers on, 5-minute timer started.
Copy, on for 5 minutes. Thank you.
This is Artemis Mission Control at Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. A mission elapsed time of 6 days, 23 hours, and 52 minutes. Meaning this time last week we had resumed that 10-minute hold and we were in countdown for liftoff of Orion on the Space Launch System rocket. Currently, Orion is 187,283 miles from Earth and continuing to grow closer. This view coming from a camera mounted on one of its solar arrays, looking toward us on Earth.
Houston shutting down the accelerometers in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, off.
Copy, accelerometers off. Thank you, sir. Integrity Houston for timeline look ahead.
Go ahead, Houston.
All right, one more timeline delta with the addition of the leak test for prop. The afternoon news conference, that's your PAO event currently at about MET 3 hours 10, is going to move about an hour to the right. So we'll come up AOS on Madrid. We'll spend about 30 minutes doing prop stuff with you, and then give you 30 minutes to set up the cameras and so forth and start the PAO event after that.
Okay, sounds great.
That's Capcom Stan Love in Artemis Mission Control here in Houston, speaking with the crew. Again, our public affairs event this evening will now begin at 10:45 p.m. Eastern Time, 9:45 p.m. Central Time.
Integrity Houston, no action on the enabled caution. That's part of our cabin.
Happy, thanks, Dan.
NASA astronaut and capsule communicator Stan Love calling to the crew aboard the Orion spacecraft. They received a caution about their cabin pressure. However, it will clear out on its own after the oxygen levels out inside the cabin. We are currently repressurizing Orion. There was a demonstration flight test objective to have the cabin pressure at 10.2 psi. That repressurization has been going on for about an hour and a half now, and the pressure is currently at 13.27. We're currently at a mission elapsed time of 7 days and 6 minutes, meaning it has officially been a week since Orion launched to fly around the moon and come back home to Earth, targeting that splashdown in 2 days, 1 hour, 25 minutes in the Pacific Ocean. We do expect to see the crew and hear from them shortly during the Canadian Space Agency Public Affairs event. That'll be in about 40 minutes. This is Artemis Mission Control at Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. You are looking at a live view of the Orion spacecraft in our home planet, Earth. Earth will continue to grow in the frame as we are targeting splashdown now in 2 days, 1 hour, and 16 minutes. The crew is currently enjoying their midday meal, and we expect to see and hear from them in about 30 minutes for the Canadian Space Agency Public Affairs event.